everybody, where are we today? We're at the Vineland Historical and Antiquarian Society in Vineland, New Jersey, where there's a tremendous amount of history inside. So let's go inside and check it out, shall we? And happy Halloween. So Pat, what part of the museum are we in now? There's a lot of glass here. Look at this jar. Oh,
that's known as a carboy. That's what they use to ship produce and products on trains.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, they would be filled to the brim and then stacked on their sides.
It's so thick.
Yes.
I didn't realize that when I've seen pictures of them.
And imagine that they were blown into a mold.
Wow.
That some poor man had to use every bit of lung power to create that.
To get the form.
Yes, and especially, like you said, at that thickness as well.
Is this gentleman significant?
This gentleman is
Mr.
August Hofbauer. Mr. Hofbauer was a master glass blower who trained many generations of young men as glass blowers. And he came originally from Austria and moved to this area. And he was the first person to ever mass produce hand-blown glassware for sale in retail stores.
Wow.
And you'll see some examples of his work on the top shelf over here.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that green piece with the ball in it.
Very imaginative.
Very nice.
Yes. And then, of course, later a lot of the glassware went to being blown into a mold, but it still required a lot of skill and talent to be able to do the work.
I mean, this is such intricate, beautiful stuff. I love the claw on the blue one. That's really neat. It looks like the claw of a bird, probably a raptor or a dinosaur. Ah.
Well, one of Vineland's most significant contributions to glassmaking was the Durand Art Glass division of the Vineland Flint Glass Works.
Look at this beautiful, it's unbelievable how beautiful this stuff is. It blew my mind. I thought it was ceramics for a minute, and then I was like, wait, it's all glass.
In the early 1920s, Victor Durand Jr. had inherited full ownership of the Vineland Flint Glass Works, and he decided it was time to create some of the beautiful art glass that he had grown up seeing made in the factories in France. So he called Martin Bach Jr., who had been a designer for Tiffany, and he said to Martin, essentially, get everyone you could think of and bring them to Vineland. I will pay them what they want and they can make what they want. So no creative person in their right mind is going to refuse an offer like that. So they came down and they began production on the iridescent art glass that you see mostly on the top two shelves, but also down in the third section. And within 2 years, they had won an award at the Philadelphia Sesquicentennial for the quality of their work. These little tiny lines that you see running through these pieces, this is called spider webbing, and that's all glass. So imagine the skill that it took to create something like that.
Right, to lay lines of glass on top of glass.
Yes,
and
exactly.
that peacock design.
Yes.
I don't know if it is a peacock, but it reminiscent to me of a feather.
Yes. And this one actually had belonged to a former board member. And after it was broken, I said to him, I said, please don't throw that out. I said, I don't have that pattern at the museum. I said, and this gives folks an opportunity to see all the layers of glass.
The inside.
That they...
oh, wow, I do see that.
Yeah.
There's like a clear yellow layer and then an opaque white layer and then the layer on top that they use to adhere that. It almost looks like metal, like they wrapped it with wire or something, and that's glass.
But the saddest part of this story was that while production was running full tilt for the first few years, in 1931, when the Depression hit, they really couldn't even give this stuff away because people couldn't afford food.
Oh.
So they weren't that concerned with buying decorative glassware.
Right.
But then there was also another tragedy that same year because Victor Duran Jr. was killed in an automobile accident, and the fatality was caused by the front window glass of his car.
Oh, man.
So he lived by glass and he died by glass.
That is such a shame.
Yes, so then what happened was Kimball Glass, which was best known for its scientific glassware, took over the division in an effort to keep it going, and they created these pieces called Cluthra. But unfortunately, it didn't receive the same appreciation as the earlier art glass pieces did.
That's right, and now we see it on Antiques Roadshow.
Yes.
Or someone's going, what? It's worth what?
Exactly. So, and then of course in the corner over there, our little tribute to Dr. Welch and the glass.
Can I just ask you about these?
The canes?
What? So folks use these as canes?
No,
No,
no.
they did not use these as canes.
You have to remember these
I
were
lost
people,
my volunteer position here already, didn't I?
these were people who did not believe in letting any ounce of glass go to waste.
Gotcha.
So at the end of the day, if anything was left over, they sometimes created these wonderful canes, basically to give as gifts to family members and friends,
Beautiful.
but also to carry as a badge of office when they marched in parades.
I am the glass blower.
That's it, because
Look at my trade.
these gentlemen were the first union in America. They basically told the factory owners, if you want us, this is what you will pay us. And since they were also a very competitive lot, they would try and create something innovative and different from what anybody else made, which is why you have such variety.
It's really incredible.
Yeah.
All right, so you were mentioning
Dr. Welch.
Dr. Welch.
So this case is set up in honor of Dr. Thomas B. Welch, who in 1869 created his formula for non-alcoholic grape drink.
Right.
Dr. Welch's original intention was to sell it primarily to churches because he was a staunch teetotaler and he believed that churches should not be using wine
For the sacrament.
in communion services.
I love these. It's
Yes.
beautiful.
Yes.
Well, Vineland, New Jersey Grape Juice Company.
Yes.
What extraordinary little bottles. How did you come across some of this stuff?
Well, what happened was after Dr. Welch's company left Vineland, these other companies, these smaller companies, were created by local individuals. In the case of the Vineland Grape Juice Company, a lot of those folks had worked for Dr. Welch where they learned their trade and they decided to keep the grape juice industry alive and well, and that's when they created this. This wonderful postcard is an enlargement of a postcard that was created for Holly Beach, New Jersey, which was the original name of Wildwood.
Oh, Holly Beach was.
And that was her job, was to stand in that large fake bottle
And give
sell
people
little tiny bottles or nickel shots of grape juice to the public.
Oh, that's wonderful.
See, it really wasn't Dr. Welch who promoted grape juice to any great degree. It was actually his son Charles, who was also a dentist, who realized the commercial potential because in the late 19th century, Americans were going health crazed.
That's right.
They wanted to
The
get
Kellogg's
healthy,
and
eat
all the
healthy,
right brand.
exercise. So yes, so Charles saw the potential for this as something that could be promoted, and it caught on like wildfire and continued to be successful even to this day.
I love how it says, Vineland grape juice makes you well and keeps you well and is absolutely pure. And they can deliver full cases anywhere.
That's it. The ones at the center of this case are known as the Millville Rose.
The flowers inside.
Yes,
right?
these were made in the Millville Vineland area, and these are considered to be the first uniquely American design for paperweights. Before this, they would copy European styles, but someone came up with this method of making a paperweight, and from there, all bets were off. They just went.
They went crazy.
went crazy.
I'm more of a simple gal in terms of design,
Uh-huh.
so I'm really digging some of these ones with the little air bubbles in them.
Which
and I'm
were
wondering,
they used a pick
how the heck did they do
to
that?
stay there and poke the hole into
While the glass was
while the glass was still
super
molten.
hot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've never seen a standing, I don't know if this was a paperweight, but
Yeah.
it's really incredible.
Yeah. And another interesting piece that we have in here is actually this first roll of cylinder glass that was made at Tillier Brothers, which was a new glass company in Vineland at that point in time. And a lot of people are not aware is that that was how window glass was actually made in those days. They would create a roll, and then once it was cooled, they would score it with a razor, put it back in the furnace, and then let it open flat. And from there they would cut the individual window panes. And I always say, because that took so much lung power, if you see the little bubbles or wiggles in the glass, it was actually because the poor soul had to take a breath at some point.
I like how it said they also gave the large pane of glass in
Yes.
this case, so
Yes.
that came from them as well.
Yes,
This was blown at the new glass factory by William, is it Hennis?
Hennis, yes, and that's Mr. Hennis down at the bottom there.
On Monday, September 17th, 1888 at 1 o'clock and 15 minutes.
Right.
So it was 1:15. That's really cool. And they donated this specifically to
Yes.
the collection.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah, I have a lot of little tiny medicine bottles, ephemera, that I've dug up from people's backyards when people used to throw stuff out in their backyard because there was no garbage pickup. And I really like the scientific glass too. That's really cool. Pyrex and pipettes and all that good stuff.
I always think of the hookah smoking caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland every time I look at that thing.
That's like looking at it like, wow. Oh wow. Oh, I like the painting too. The different color or different
The ingredients.
ingredients that they use to create the glass.
Yeah.
And can you tell us some of these folks, who some of these folks are?
The lady at the center of our portrait wall is Dr. Mary J Dunlap. She was a graduate of the Women's College of Medicine in Philadelphia, and her first job of significance was as the director of the State School for Women, which is still in operation here in Vineland. Dr. Dunlap was very well respected for her work, and at one point was voted in as the first female president of the Cumberland County Medical Association. She was also the first president of the Vineland Women's Club and was a mover as far as the founding of Vineland's first library association. One of our goals is hopefully to get her painting restored someday, but unfortunately conservation work is not in our budget.
Yeah, it's a very expensive prospect.
And these two folks, this is Mr. and Mrs. Loomis, two of our early New England settlers, who, as you can see, Mr. Loomis is holding a newspaper devoted to the Friends of Progress. This was an early liberal organization that the Loomises were members of, and they were also spiritualists. And one of the reasons they came to Vineland was because they were attracted by its open and free-thinking society. And they became founding members of the local Friends of Progress chapter, and also were involved with the local Spiritualist Association. We want to make sure everyone feels a sense of investment in what we're doing here. So we started out with the earliest European immigrants, which include the Italians, the Jews, and the Greeks, who came here in the second half of the 19th century. And we're going to add in the Latinos, the French, the Irish, Asians, the Russians, the Slavs, as many people as we know were represented here and contributed to Vineland's growth and development. One of our first hometown heroes is Captain Inman Selby, and his claim to fame is that he was the first ship's captain to ever use the newly installed Marconi telegraph system after the laying of the Atlantic cable between the United States and Europe. What happened was Captain Selby's ship, the Republic, which was a sister ship to the Titanic, it was a big, beautiful liner, was heading out to sea and was struck by another vessel that was incoming. But with the telegraph system available, Captain Selby got his radio man, Jack Binns, the younger man in the portrait next to him. He got Jack Binns to go ahead and call for help, so that they wound up only losing about 4 passengers and crew members that day. Captain Selby later retired from the sea and moved back to Vineland, where he had grown up. And he eventually became president of the Historical Society's Board of Trustees. And because he never had any children, we inherited so much of his records and photographs of his travels that he took. He went around the world numerous times. So he's quite an interesting personality. I had one intern stay on with me for an extra year after his semester ended because he was determined to get all of Captain Selby's files organized.
That's dedication.
So, yes, it is. Yes, it is. So then the next personality.
Is this the?
That's not the original one,
But
it's
that's
one
an
like it.
example,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And the information about that particular
Yes.
ship,
Yes.
and it looks like his specs and some of his
Yes.
buttons from a jacket.
And that trunk that's next to you too, that was his.
Oh. From London to New York.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I'd love to go on a big ship across the Atlantic.
So our next hometown hero is Mary Davis Treat. Mary Treat was the subject of a book titled Unsheltered by noted author Barbara Kingsolver in 2018. But Mary Treat's story is still unfolding because every day we discover new information about her life. One of the most significant facts about her is that she was such a good naturalist, she actually discovered a mistake in the works of Charles Darwin. And Mr. Darwin, being a true scientist, did not discriminate because she was female. He just told everybody that Mrs. Treat helped him keep his research on track, and he was very grateful to her for it. She corresponded with numerous famous scientists of the day, in addition to Mr. Darwin, and discovered various species of insects and plant life, some of which were named in her honor. And the book that she wrote about using natural methods of insect control was so popular with farmers that it was actually reprinted 5 times.
That's incredible.
This gentleman is Admiral Wallace Beakley, as you can see, a very well-decorated veteran of the U.S. Navy. We have a medallion here that was presented to Admiral Beakley by the Chinese government, and as far as we know, he is one of 2 non-Chinese people to ever win that award, called the Dao Ping.
Is that his picture right there?
Yes. For protecting the coast of China from Japanese invasion during World War II.
All right. That's wonderful. Every Wednesday evening at the new Colonial Ballroom, there was a dance, 50 cents. I bet that was a nice big band.
Yep.
Well, you've got ration books for gasoline and all kinds of memorabilia and ephemera from those days.
And we end the main section here with the Consolidation in 1952, when the borough of Vineland and Landis Township were joined back together again to form what I call the largest small town in New Jersey at 69 square miles.
Wow.
This is the Landis family room. Unfortunately, Mr. Landis and his wife Clara did not have a happy marriage. It only lasted for about 8 years.
Oh.
During that time, they had 4 boys. The oldest boy, Henry Miggs, wound up dying of cholera before he reached his 1st birthday. So that threw a fracture into the marriage that they never recuperated from. And it didn't help either that a few years later, Mr. Landis decided to shoot the newspaper editor who was writing all these scandalous stories about his family.
Oh, I remember reading about that.
Yeah. It wound up that when he went on trial a year later for the man's murder, by then public opinion had kind of swung around in his favor, and he became the 2nd person in America to get off on a verdict of temporary insanity. But most of the artifacts in this room are mementos from the Landis family homes in Vineland and Sea Isle. And over in this corner, we have a picture of Mrs. Landis and baby Henry. And this was Charles in his younger days. And this was the oldest remaining son after Henry passed. This was Richard. I'm sorry, that was Charles Jr., who became an attorney like his dad.
Did any one of the Landis boys carry on in their father's footsteps in terms of, you know, adding to the society that he envisioned?
Actually, the boys basically struck out on their own. Charles did do a lot of real estate work for his Aunt Matilda, who inherited a good portion of her brother's estate after he died in 1900.
That's Aunt Matilda up
That's
there?
Aunt Matilda.
She looks like Aunt Matilda.
But the remaining two younger boys, Richard, who is in the large portrait over there.
It's a beautiful portrait.
Yes, he wanted to be an artist, but unfortunately he died of kidney disease at 39.
Oh, bummer.
And the youngest son, James, eventually wound up leaving Vineland to go to California, where he settled.
They even have a portrait of the family dog.
Yes, that was actually painted by Richard. Yeah. Yeah, he did have a lot of talent, but unfortunately he never lived to fulfill his potential.
Oh.
So,
And all these books belong to Mr. Landis?
the books that are in these cases belong to Mr. Landis and other family members. We were able to get them cleaned up and documented so that we know what belonged where.
That's wonderful.
And we're very pleased to be able to let our visitors see especially how far-reaching his interests were. Everything from astronomy to zoology.
Wow.
Charles took an interest in it.
That's amazing.
A lot of people are not aware either that he actually wrote a science fiction novel called A Trip to the Moon in 1876, about 10 years after Jules Verne first published his novel. And it's a fascinating story because it basically shows Vineland transplanted to another planet.
Vineland on planet Zork.
Yeah.
That's right. I wonder if they would still call it Vineland.
And then through here we have our Native American collection dedicated to the Lenni Lenape, who were the first people to live in this region.
This is wonderful.
The mosaics on this wall over here were actually created by a Vineland man named Carrie Perkins. Mr. Perkins was the one of the first people in this area to really take an interest in collecting Native American artifacts. And most of them are copies of famous paintings and statues that he studied over the years. They're actually made completely out of bird tip arrowheads.
They're really beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. I love the portrait of the...
That's his wife.
Oh, that's
As
wonderful.
in-
Show me that. That's really beautiful. Who knows what you could do with little bits of things, you know? She has an eagle in her head right there. She has a couple of eagles going. Anna T. Perkins. I love how he put a brooch on her dress as well. Oh, with iridescent stones. Wow, this is a cool room, Pat.
Our last stop is our Civil War room. Even though Vineland did not initially send many men to fight in the Civil War because our population was still very small at that point in time, later men did go and do their duty as far as serving in the Union Army. And when the war ended, a lot of people from the New England area who had also served came back to Vineland because they had heard such good things about the town. And the population jumped from several hundred people up to over 5,000, which was a fairly substantial increase.
That is a big increase.
And one thing that always fascinates me is the fact that most of what you're looking at actually came from the hands of the veterans themselves to the Historical Society, since we have been around since 1864.
Wow. I bet that was wonderful for some of them to come and donate their stuff, as well as be able to come back and look at some things that,
Exactly.
you know.
Here over in this corner we have the saddle ridden by Major Washburn at the Battle of Antietam. And because they hated to throw anything out in those days, after he was wounded, they actually kept the bullet that had been used to shoot him in the head.
Is that hole in the saddle where the bullet came through?
Yes, it is.
Right there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the bullet that came through. Wow. I like this flag segments too.
Yes, I thought that was quite an original.
The piece is at the center. The piece at the center is from a Confederate flag, while the other pieces are from his regimental flag.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's too glary, but God, this table is just really amazing. I love marble top things. Throw some more marble top things. Yeah, tell us about that little house, Pat.
Okay, the little house that sits on our north lawn
Yes.
is actually the first structure ever built in Vineland in 1862. It was built on the northeast corner of Landis Avenue and the Railroad Boulevard, and it has quite an interesting history because it served very briefly as a residence, but then was later moved further down Landis Avenue to serve as a jewelry store, a general store, and then it was moved once again to a property over on Peach Street owned by Mr. Landis. And then from Peach Street, it went over to Landis Park where it sat for many generations, and it was actually occupied until 1962. In 1962, they discovered in the files that it was actually the property of the Historical Society, so they brought it back here. And we have over the years done our best to maintain it. We re-roofed it about 5 years ago and gave it a fresh coat of paint about a year ago. So we're trying to keep it whole for future generations of visitors so that they can see what life was like in early Vineland.
That's a very, very cute little house.
Yes.
I mean, it's fairly sizable. You know?
14 by 16, which most people don't realize the reason they started out so small was to prove to Mr. Landis that they were genuinely serious about living in Vineland, and also because they did not live inside their houses the way we do now. They basically went home to eat, sleep, maybe relax a little bit before bedtime, but when dawn came, you were out the door and off to work, and that meant the entire family, not just the parents.
That's right.
So,
Now, I heard a rumor, books, that there might be a ghost here.
as a matter of fact, we have a ghost.
You do?
Yes, his name is Frank Andrews.
Frank Andrews, the ghost. Oh no.
And his job here for over 40 years was essentially doing the work that I do now as curator. He looked after the collections, he kept the records, and just basically kept the building in order. And we think that one of the reasons he's still here is that he was just so devoted to this place that he just hated to leave. And the story starts out about 8 years ago when I had a volunteer coming in to work with me. And one day this young man came in and he said, "Who's the old guy wandering around out back of the property?" I said, "What old guy?" I jumped up and I looked out the window and I didn't see a soul. So I said, "Well, what did he look like?" And he described him as being a gray-haired man with a funny little beard and mustache, wearing a straw hat, having suspenders, and not exactly the kind of dress that you would see on someone around town today. And when he asked the gentleman where he was from, the man kind of smiled and nodded his head like that and said, "Oh, over yonder." Which was another clue right there. Well, as he's describing the man to me, I'm getting a little bit of a cold chill. And I went into the front room where I knew my volunteer had never been, and I picked up a picture and I brought it back and I said, "Alan, is this the gentleman that you saw?" And Alan said, "Yes, that's him. Does he volunteer here?" I said, "Well," I said, "it's really cool that you saw him, except for the fact that he's been dead for 60 years.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I was just going to ask the question, when did Mr. Andrews die?
Yes, it's been a while. And since then, we periodically hear footsteps. We periodically have doors open where there's no one supposed to be. But I like to think that he's very pleased with the work that we've been doing because he hasn't thrown anything at me yet.
Good.
And the other solid proof that we have is that about 5 years ago, one of my board members was down in the basement cleaning Mr. Andrews' bicycle, which had a little bell on the front. And he got it all polished up very meticulously, and he was the only person in the building at that point. So he shuts off the lights, and he's headed back up the stairs, and all of a sudden from the back room where the bicycle is sitting, he hears ring, 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 almost like Frank was saying thank you.
Thank you for keeping my
Yes.
polished.
Yes. So yes,
Wow.
that's our resident ghost.
That's amazing. Yeah, I don't understand people that don't believe in other realities.
Well, I always tease my volunteers and tell them that I'm so devoted to this place that after I'm gone, I plan to be up on the 3rd floor reading all the books that I haven't had a chance to get to yet.
You and Mr. Andrews
Me and Mr.
occasionally.
Andrews,
will
yes,
come.
Frank and I will keep each other company.
That's incredible.
But I will throw stuff if anybody's doing anything wrong.
I won't do anything wrong, I promise. Who knows, you might outlive me, so there you go, I might be here. All right, Pat, thank you so much. Hey, what you doing? We're back here at the Vineland Historical Museum, and we're going to read you a couple of books. This is Attack of the 50-Foot Teacher by Lisa Passon. And it's for Ruby. See the picture of Ruby with the cat? The cat's like, okay. Miss Irma Birnbaum was the toughest teacher in town. She looks tough. She reminds me of my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Foster. She was very tough. Sit in your seats, children. No talking. Pass your homework assignments forward. Open your books to page 24. Read! Miss Irma Birnbaum never smiled. All the children were afraid of her. But Miss Irma Birnbaum wasn't afraid of anyone or anything. It was Halloween. And it was a school day. The children were eager for school to be over. Everyone was excited about going trick-or-treating. Just before the bell rang for the end of school, Miss Irma Birnbaum wrote the day's homework assignment on the chalkboard. For tomorrow, read chapter 13 of your history books. Be prepared for a test. Answer questions 20 to 31 in your math workbooks, and learn the new words on your spelling sheet. Homework on Halloween! That seemed like an awful lot of homework, didn't it? So the children moaned homework on Halloween as they left the classroom. Miss Irma Birnbaum is the cruelest teacher in the world. Look how sad they look. They just want to go home, put their costumes on, go around their neighborhoods, hang out with their friends, get some candy. But no, they have to do the math work and the spelling and the chapter and be ready for a test. Miss Irma Birnbaum stayed behind and checked science tests. It was very late when she left. The road home was blocked off. Miss Irma Birnbaum took a detour. Dun, dun, dun. The unfamiliar path was dark and deserted. In her rearview mirror, Miss Irma Birnbaum saw something odd hovering in the sky. A bright glowing spaceship quickly passed the car, and it landed right in front of her. Move this vehicle and move it right now. She was even tough on the aliens, she shouted. Miss Irma Birnbaum really wasn't afraid of anything or anyone. And look how cool her car is with those fins. Like a car from the 1950s. The spaceship began to glow more brightly. It started spinning around at a fantastic speed and took off into the night. Miss Irma Birnbaum stepped back. She felt funny. Her stocking started to itch. She took off her glasses and rubbed her eyes. Miss Irma Birnbaum put her glasses back on and looked down. Her car was the size of a toy. The trees were as small as azalea bushes. She had grown incredibly tall. Miss Irma Birnbaum was now a 50-foot teacher. No! Oh, boy. That's too much. Look at her feet. As Miss Irma Birnbaum walked around town, the earth shook beneath her giant feet. Ruby Flint was the first to see her. Ruby dropped her bag of Halloween candy and ran to warn the others. Ah! Cars screeched to a halt. People looked out their windows and screamed. Here comes Miss Birnbaum! No, she's going to give us more homework. Miss Birnbaum is coming! Miss Birnbaum is coming! Shouted Ruby. Big deal, said Johnny O'Leary. We still have enough time to finish our homework. No, you don't understand, exclaimed Ruby. Miss Birnbaum is a... Look at Miss Birnbaum! Screamed Cheryl Shackmeyer. Miss Birnbaum is a 50-foot teacher! Oh! Ah! Screamed the children. I told you we should have done our homework, declared Ruby. Miss Irma Birnbaum staggered towards them. Johnny O'Leary! Miss Irma Birnbaum's voice echoed loudly throughout the dark sky. She reached down and grabbed poor Johnny. What are you doing out so late at night, Johnny? I'm sorry, Mrs. Birnbaum. I'm going to go home right now and finish my homework, I promise. She still has Johnny. Look, he dropped his bag of candy. It's not right. Miss Irma Birnbaum turned toward the others. And the rest of you, do you parents know you're wandering about at this unearthly hour? I'm taking you all to the principal. She scooped up the other children and put them in her purse. Her enormous legs stepped over houses and trees until she reached Main Street. My goodness, how to wreck Halloween. Miss Irma Birnbaum rang the doorbell of Principal Renfield's house. The principal opened his front door. Yes? He looked up, way up. Miss Birnbaum, what has become of you? The 50-foot teacher placed the children on Principal Renfield's lawn. These children are out alone at night and they haven't done their homework. Good grief, woman, exclaimed Principal Renfield. Who gives homework on Halloween? Don't you remember what it was like to be a child? Don't you remember the fun of wearing your costume and trick-or-treating or eating so much candy that your stomach got sick? I used to go home and segregate all my candy, like all the M&Ms, all the Snickers bars, all the Milky Ways, all... and that weird homemade thing that you get once in a while that you're like, yeah, you can have this, Mom. Halloween, thought Irma Birnbaum. It was Halloween? Happy memories of her girlhood flashed through her mind. Costumes, candy, tricks and treats. Had it been that long ago, how could she have forgotten? Look, she had the same hair when she was a little girl, except she had ponytails. The giant teacher stepped back. She felt funny. Her stocking started to itch again. Attention, Miss Irma Birnbaum shouted. Every child on every street stopped to listen. Your homework assignment for tonight is to have as much fun as you can. After all, it's Halloween, and Halloween only comes once a year. Oh, goodness gracious. Is Miss Birnbaum feeling okay? Johnny asked Principal Renfield. The principal smiled. Miss Irma Birnbaum took a flashlight out of her purse. You children go on trick-or-treating. I'll look after you to make sure you're safe. The children couldn't believe their good fortune, and the parents were pleased that the trick-or-treaters wouldn't have to wander about in the dark. I thought that was fun, though. All agreed it was the best Halloween they ever had. With Miss Irma Birnbaum looking over them. Just past midnight, Miss Irma Birnbaum fell asleep in front of the school. She was very dedicated. When she awoke the next morning, she had shrunk to her normal size. What an extraordinary experience I've had. When the children came to class, they were disappointed to see the same old Miss Irma Birnbaum they had always known, the one who had never smiled. Sit in your seats, children. No talking. Miss Irma Birnbaum walked to the front of the classroom. She bent down and scratched her leg. Did everyone have a happy Halloween? She asked. Yes, shouted the children. So did I, said Miss Irma Birnbaum, and she smiled. Wasn't that a fantastic book? I really like that book a lot. Let's give a hand for that book. All right, and our next book is called Wiener by Beakley. It's the same guy that writes Dogman, the Dogman series of graphic novels, which I love. Wiener by Beakley. There once was a dog named Oscar who was half a dog tall and 1.5 dogs long. Look at all those cool leaves. You see the cats laughing at the dog? They've never seen such a long dog. It looks like the pumpkins are laughing at him too. Because of his unusual shape and size, all the other dogs made fun of him. Wiener dog, they called him. And Oscar did not like it one bit. Do you like it when people make fun of you? No. Should you make fun of other people? No. Oscar's mother was no help either. Every morning when the dogs walked off to obedience school, Oscar's mother stood in the front yard waving and calling out, "Farewell, my little Vienna sausage!" And the other dogs laughed, and the cats laughed, and the pumpkins laughing. I think the flowers and grass might have even laughed at him too. Today's lesson, sit and stay. And the dog at the chalkboard is writing, I will not sniff my neighbor. I will not sniff my neighbor. I will not sniff my neighbor. Most of the time, Oscar was upset by all of this, but not today. Today was Halloween, and Oscar was thinking about other things. All day long at obedience school, Oscar daydreamed about Halloween night, tricks or treats, and scary costumes. Look at the cats in the window. They're making faces at him. Bleh. So you guys have to be in school. The teacher is reading a book called Dogs Who Hate Fleas and the Fleas Who Love Them. That's a good one. Oh. When Oscar got home, he dashed upstairs to start working on his scary Halloween costume. But when he got to his room, a surprise was waiting for him. Happy Halloween, my little sausage link, said Oscar's mother. I've made you a costume to wear for trick or treats. It says, Happy Halloween to Oscar, love Mom. When Oscar saw the costume, he nearly fainted. Oh gosh. What do you think it was? I'm scared. There was a mini one. Oh no! It was a giant hot dog bun, complete with mustard. And guess who was supposed to fit in the middle? Oscar did not want to hurt his mother's feelings, so he decided to wear the silly costume. Let's see, he gave her a kiss with his tongue. Oh, goodness gracious, Oscar. That night, all the dogs on the block gathered to show off their costumes. Everyone was looking quite scary. Then Oscar showed up looking quite frank. That's another name for a hot dog, right? Frank. Knuckle sandwich. When the dogs saw Oscar in his silly costume, they howled with laughter. Oh, look at that hot dog. Look at Oscar. He really is a wiener. Poor Oscar was so embarrassed. Wiener dog, laughed all the other dogs as they ran off to go trick-or-treating. Oscar tried to keep up with the dogs, but his silly costume kept slowing him down. That's a cool picture. I want to go trick-or-treating. Am I too old? Too big? Never! All night long, the other dogs hounded every treat they could get their paws on. Look at them. Digging in the bowls and taking multiple candies. So by the time Oscar got to each house, there were no treats left. Oh, man, he had to wear that costume and not get any treats. This sounds like one big trick of a Halloween to me. Soon trick-or-treating was over, and the dogs walked home past the spooky graveyard. Suddenly, a horrible hissing sound filled the air. Hiss! The dogs stopped dead in their tracks. Then out of the graveyard rose a ghastly monster. The dogs screamed for their lives. They dropped their treats and jumped into a nearby pond. Ah! Splash. Wonder if their candy got... Oh, no, they dropped their treats, so their candy wouldn't get wet. That's all I'm worried about is, did their candy get wet? The monster moved closer. Please don't eat us, cried the dogs. The monster yowled and hissed. Boo! Sobbed the dogs. The monster jumped up and down. Ah! Somebody save us! Shrieked the dogs. That moon is pretty big, huh? At least there was a moon they could see. Just then, somebody showed up. It was Oscar. Because Oscar was so short, he saw something that the other dogs had not seen. That's no monster. And with a loud bark, Oscar waddled to the rescue. Oscar chomped and tugged with all his might. Can you see? Can you see? There's two creatures inside of there. One's holding the arms, one's holding the other one on top of their head. I have a mysterious feeling that I know who these creatures are. Rip! And there, standing in the moonlight, were a couple of ornery cats. Help, cried the cats. We're being attacked by a giant frankfurter. And they ran off screaming through the graveyard. Ah! It was their turn to be scared, right? All right. The dogs in the pond had seen the whole thing. Now it was their turn to be embarrassed. We've been chased into a pond by a couple of cats, they moaned. But Oscar was a true friend. He leapt into the water and swam out to the dogs. Oscar's silly costume made a wonderful life raft, and the dogs climbed up. All aboard, Oscar called, and he dog paddled back to the shore with his little tiny legs. So he's saving all those doggies that made fun of him. When they got back to dry land, all the dogs shared their Halloween treats with Oscar. Because Oscar had been so brave, the dogs changed his nickname from Wiener Dog to Hero Sandwich. And from that night on, nobody ever made fun of Oscar again. Yeah, Oscar. Happy Halloween, Nerd Dog. Whoa, that was great. I hope you enjoyed those books. Please stay tuned for another fun Halloween craft, and we'll see you soon. Hey, everybody. Ooh, what's this? It's kind of Halloween-y, don't you think? Here's a pumpkin for you. Here's a little owl. And here's a bear that's dressed up as a ghost. That's going trick-or-treating. Yes. Wow. Did we have fun or what? It's the Vineland Historical and Antiquarian Society Museum. Yes! I got it right, Pat. And how about that story about that ghost, Fred? Oh, now, I didn't see Fred when I was there. I don't know. I didn't really feel anything. But we weren't there for very long, and we were busy filming and walking around and talking. So I don't know. I'm gonna go again and see if anything happens. But in lieu of that, we're gonna make a pumpkin today. And what I did was, to get us started, I painted this wonderful paper plate a nice orange color with the tempera paint. So, and I let that dry. It's probably been drying for about, 2 or 3 hours now. So it's good to go. It got a little wrinkly because it got wet from the paint, but it's okay. It's a pumpkin. Hey, hey. The first thing that we're going to do with the pumpkin is we're going to draw some eyes and a kooky little pumpkin mouth. So let's start with the eyes. And why, yes, I'm drawing triangles. Because that's what everybody seems to draw or carve out of their pumpkin. Do you like to carve pumpkins? Did you carve a pumpkin? I haven't carved a pumpkin in a long time. But I sure do like pumpkin pie, I tell you. So maybe we'll have some of that for Thanksgiving, if you celebrate that. When everybody gets together and says what they are thankful for. I think that's a great holiday. So here, there's a good eye. And we'll make another eye. And they don't have to be exactly perfect or the same. Because it's your creation. It's your pumpkin. All right, so there's some eyeballs. And how about a mouth? I'm thinking kind of like a smile. All right, we'll do a smile with maybe a tooth missing. And the bottom part of the smile with another tooth missing right about there. I think that would be a good mouth for our pumpkin. Oh, hello. So what were you for Halloween? Did you dress up? Did you get a chance to go trick-or-treating? Oh, those all sound like some pretty great costumes. I've been a ghost and a witch and a hobo. I've been a bride that came back from the dead. Ooh. I've been a lot of things. I love Halloween. I think Halloween is probably my favorite holiday of the whole year. And Dia de los Muertos is fun too. Not so much fun as it is a wonderful way to celebrate the people that we've lost in our lives and to remember them. That's why I really love it. When I lived in San Francisco about 25 years ago, they have a really cool Dia de los Muertos celebration and parade, and I marched in the parade, and then at the end of the parade, we all met in a beautiful park in a neighborhood in San Francisco, and we all had our tables set up so that we could honor our ancestors and our friends that we lost. And it was really beautiful. And everyone was dressed up in their Dia de la Muerte costumes. So here are the eyes and the smile. What do you think about that? That's pretty cool, right? The only other thing we're going to cut out today is we're going to cut out a little top of the pumpkin where it was attached to its vine. That's how the pumpkin grows. It's kind of like, you know, that little stem of an apple. Here, this is the pumpkin stem. And we're also going to make, with these pipe cleaners, we're going to make little curly, I don't know what to call them, little curly doodads. There we go. And I'm just going to take this and I'm actually going to trim it down just a little bit. It's a little bit too long. And I'm going to wrap it around my finger. And look, it made a little curl. Isn't that cute? And we'll do another one with this other color, green. Maybe we'll make it another size. You can wrap it around your pinky instead. They're kind of parts of the plant of the pumpkin. Yeah, that's it. I'm going with that. So we're going to take a little glue and we're going to put it on the side that we cut it out with so that the pencil marks won't show when we glue it onto the pumpkin. And there you go. And then we're going to glue down the eyes. Hold on, let me just get that eye up. Get that one up too. What's your favorite candy? What is your most favorite candy to have for Halloween? I have a few. And this is in order of how I like them. I would probably start with Milky Way bar. I really like Milky Way bar. Then I would probably go for M&Ms. I really like M&Ms too. And what other candy? I like Bit-O-Honey. Does anybody remember that? Bit-O-Honey. It was kind of like a maple flavored taffy with little bits of nuts and honey. It was just delicious. One year, my mom and my stepdad and I dressed up as bees, and we went to this party in a big city called Boston, which is up in Massachusetts. And we drove up there from where I used to live in New York. And we were 3 little bees. I was probably about 7 or 8. And my mom sent me down to the store to get a couple of bags of Bit-O-Honey because, hey, what do bees do? They make honey. And so we were going to pass out the Bit-O-Honeys at the party. And I got a bag of Mary Jane's. Duh. So my mom was like, nope, you have to go back to the store and get the Bit-O-Honey. And I did. And we drove up to Boston, and it was great. What a wonderful party that was. There was lots of people dressed up as lots of things. We had a lot of fun. And I passed out little Bit-O-Honeys. So there is your pumpkin. What do you think? Is it scary enough? No, we don't need a scary pumpkin. We have a happy pumpkin. So we hope you enjoyed all the wonderful things that you saw at the Vineland Historical Society today. Such cool items. You must go there with your family and say hi to Pat for us. Pat was so nice to have us there. Thank you so much, Pat, for having us at your wonderful place and for all the great work that you do curating and learning about that stuff so you can tell us all the wonderful collection that you have and the ongoing changing collections that you do, like the postcards. And so you need to go to the museum every once in a while and see what's next. And I hope you run into Fred. So, boo. And happy Halloween until next year. Thank you so much for tuning in to our craft. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.